Now, another thing that we need to talk about as a group, I think y'all already know where I'm going. It's a good old ragtag adventure called Justice League. All right? I like Justice League. I have no problem with Justice League, but apparently people in the United States and everywhere else did. Now, I saw Justice League. I watched it. Like I said, I enjoyed it. It gave me some things that I did not think that it was going to give me, but there's still a problem there with Warner Brothers and DC and not having to have a character in your arsenal that always has a contingency plan. And we're talking about Batman. There's no contingency plan here. How do you have a character that always has a contingency plan, and you as a studio and an organization and a well-known, renowned company not have a contingency plan or a plan in general? Again, I enjoyed Justice League. I loved it. The CGI was horrible. But other than that, I enjoyed the movie. But people have voted with their wallets and decided not to go see Justice League. Now, I want to start with Jeremy first. What are your thoughts on the movie, and what are your thoughts on where DC is going? We already understand that they're doing some shakeups already. They're already doing some shakeups and moving some people around and sitting some people down and, you know, being confirmed about what they're going to do going forward. We already know the list of movies that they got coming out. Aquaman, of course, is the only movie that's coming out next year. They got 4 movies in 2019. And I think they got another 3 or 4 movies in 2020. So, Jeremy, what's your take?
Well, then, first of all, I'm part of the reason why Justice League underperformed. I have not seen the movie yet, and you know, for what that's worth, had I have not had such a sour taste in my mouth from the previous films, I would have been a lot more motivated to go out there and actually see it and support it and those kind of things. And I mean, we do a podcast when we were doing it really, really regularly. We're talking about once a week, and I just feel sorry for these pundits that have to talk about this every day, because I'm already sick of talking about how many different plans and strategies and relaunches and titles that get thrown out, and then directors getting brought on and leaving and restructuring and shaking up and all that. I mean, it's the same old song and dance. They've been doing it since the beginning. We just now talked about Infinity War, which is the gold standard of how you build to an epic climax in a big team-up movie, and then we see the exact opposite end of the coin. And I know this is always going to be divisive, but this is just my perspective. I do not represent anybody other than my own self and my own personal preference, and I'm glad that people liked it. I just, as far as my I can't be excited about the future of the Warner Brothers movies. Wonder Woman was a fantastic fluke. It was a mistake that it was good at this point, really. I mean, that's how I see it. It's like they've had everything working up against them, and I don't know, man. I can't really I can't see any of this changing. I don't know. I don't have enough information other than I know that they said that what's his name? The comic book guy, Jeff Johns, is supposedly being demoted. They're bringing on some other people. They are tying the DC branch back into the main Warner Brothers studio system. So there are some major changes going on, but, you know, from where I'm standing, I need to see something worth putting my money into, you know.
And your statement your first initial statement of I have not seen it yet, that's example enough. Here's a man who is a movie watcher, a big movie watcher, who has not seen Justice League. Mm-hmm. Man, his channel is called Movies Are Terrible. So it's not like he's not a movie watcher, a movie lover. He is the prime example of somebody who feels a deep disdain of what DC has been putting out. I've never heard Wonder Woman be described in that way, Jeremy, but it really resonates with me when you said she was a beautiful mistake, you know. Yeah. So it really resonates with me. Now, Kevin, I know you got something for me. What's going on with you and your feelings on this topic?
Okay, so let's talk about this another aspect, and I appreciate Jeremy's comments and everything he had to say, because the average moviegoer, which is what he represents a lot of times, feels the same way. Now, Jeremy is not the average moviegoer because he can tell you things about films I've never thought about. So I want to clarify that. You know, in no shape, form, or fashion, my friend, are you average. So I want to put that out there.
Oh, sure.
But I want to say this. Let's look at the timeline for this film. I'm going to get long-winded. I'm sorry, but it's our first time back. Y'all just bear with me.
Bring it.
So, we go back to BVS. We go back to BVS. BVS was made, and they told us, hey, you guys know 3 weeks after this movie comes out, Zack Snyder's going back into production for Justice League. It's going to be a two-parter, okay? So, to save money, because the sets were already built, if you look at a lot of things in this film, well, some of the stuff we didn't see, but I use one set as an example. The Kryptonian ship that's in the middle of Metropolis. Okay, you have that set already built. You've done what you need to do, so you want to reuse that. So they were going to save some costs. And go in, introduce these characters, you know, so you had Cyborg's introduction and Flash's introduction. And they were going to do all that, and then they were going to come back and say, okay, bam, here we go. We got a movie. BVS comes out. It didn't get the critical acclaim or the money that the studio wanted, so they made some adjustments. What was their adjustment? They cut some stuff, and they said, you know what, we're going to give you one Justice League film. Okay? That's their first adjustment, right? Okay, no problem. Zack goes, he films his movie. A year and a half ago, the journalists from Collider and some other internet popular movie reviewer sites were flown over to England. They saw some scenes from the film, and they said, hey, guys, look, we're not saying this thing's going to be great because we only saw about 5 minutes of the movie, but they're doing great stuff, and what we saw was cool. Okay, no problem. Let's fast forward to January of this year. January of this year, and this comes from Zack Snyder. Now, this could just be lip service or whatever. He showed his cut of the film to the execs, and he said, I want to make it a little bit lighter. I want to bring Joss Whedon in to punch up some dialogue. So for reshoots, Joss Whedon was going to be writing scenes to help them punch up some dialogue. This was in January. And the time the death of his daughter happened, a little while later, and then he left the film. And they got Joss Whedon in here to do reshoots. I submit to you all that they spent $300 million on this movie, and it was not the film. They didn't know the film they wanted to make, and they were trying to adjust the film on the fly. Case in point, in January, when Zack Snyder shows you the cut of the film, you're telling me we don't have this right and we got to bring Joss Whedon in here? So you're telling me the studio executives that are responsible for watching the dailies, for reading the script, for being all over this project, knowing that you gave a guy who doesn't really understand Superman the keys to the kingdom. Nobody was oversight on that. So you bring in Jeff Johns. He didn't do shit. You bring in the other guy that they fired. Well, they didn't fire him. They brought him moving somewhere else. He didn't do shit either. So basically, people are upset about this film, and I'm going to go ahead on and do something that I normally wouldn't do. I'm going to lay my trust at the feet of the altar of Joss Whedon. Because if this is what Joss Whedon can do in a little bit of time, they should have gave him the movie from the jump. I'm not telling you this is an excellent film. I'm telling you it's better than most of the stuff the DCEU has put out. Okay? I'm telling you I enjoyed the movie and I had fun with it. But what I'm also telling you as a comic book fan, as a movie fan, and as somebody who keeps his finger on the pulse of this stuff, they spent $300 million, and this is the best they could do. Now, let's talk about some of the things that were in the film that they took out. People blame Joss Whedon for it. I don't know who edited this movie because you can't get a straight answer out of him, and that's another thing I'm going to hit on in a second. Let's look at this. Superman in the iconic black suit that he wore in the comics when he came out of being dead. That was in the film. Darkseid was in the film. Now, let me tell you the way they put Darkseid in this film. It was not one of those, how they did Thanos, hey, I'm just going to show his face and he's going to say one or two words or whatever. There was a purpose for him being there, and it didn't necessarily have anything to do with the Justice League. It was actually one of the cooler I think ultra villain intros that could have been done, and it would have gave a different spin to this guy and with him being in the universe. Okay. So those things were cut from the film. Also, the motivation for the villain himself was cut from the film. I told Jeremy this last week. There's dialogue that seems weird and unfinished from Steppenwolf. The reason being is they cut one of the subplots from the film. Now, since we got somebody on the phone that hadn't seen it, I'm not going to go into it. I'm just going to tell you there was a subplot cut, and they didn't go back and record the dialogue. Lastly, and I get up on soapbox. In 2017, you cannot see. We let you get away with it with Wonder Woman, but you shouldn't have got away with it there either. Stop putting gray generic villains on the screen.
Yeah.
There's two things that piss me off in movies: the swirly thing in the sky and big gray generic villains. It's like Earth is the only place that has color, unless you're James Gunn. You know, stop doing it. Stop it. So, again, we got this big gray guy that nobody cares about who actually had a really cool motivation in the original script. Now, you sit back and you say, okay, Kev, the movie must have been a mess. And they said it was a mess, and they bought Josh Whedon, and he did the best he could do with it. And I'll tell you, his best is still better than BVS, and it's still better than Suicide Squad. So there's a lot that they could use to save this universe and to give us something great. This film was good, not great. I'm one of those people that think Wonder Woman was kind of generic, but I thought it was cool. So
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
They're making a mistake, and I'm gonna make this point. What happened when BVS came out? A month and a half later, Marvel put a movie out, and the movies are about the same thing: superheroes infighting. And eventually they have to fight the main villain to figure out what's going on, right? Batman versus Superman, then everybody versus Doomsday, okay? Tony against Cap, you know, and then they somehow get rid of Baron von Zemo or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Moves about the same thing. It's the same exact thing that's going to happen this time, except for there's more space in it. There is an alien coming to Earth who is going to assemble a weapon. That is what happened in Justice League, and that's what's going to happen in Infinity War. The reason why these comparisons keep happening between these two studios is they're running the same stories, they're comic book movies, and one studio seems to be doing it way better than the other one. People say the DC versus Marvel comparisons aren't fair. I got to call bullshit on that. I think it is fair, especially when you're going to put out movies that are about the same thing. So, with all that being said, I liked Justice League. I thought it was a step above Suicide Squad. You know, and some of those films that they failed on. But I think this is another DC movie that the best cut of this film is on the cutting room floor and not the movie that we saw in the theater. I rest my case. I'm off my soapbox.
I mean, that is a ton of insight that I wasn't even aware of all of the production stuff ahead of time. But when you started hitting beats that I remember, the stories, I remember Perry Nemiroff of Collider going and visiting that set. And granted that she fangirls out about everything, but I remember being really excited, like, oh, wow, if these people that have been critical of Warner Brothers in the past are coming around, there must be something there. And we've all said it to death. They tend to be very reactionary. It's like their vision is dictated by what the fans want, yet the fans don't all want the same thing, so we end up with a jumbled up mess on our hands a lot of times. And I agree so much, man. The fact that we're not supposed to compare one superhero movie to another, regardless of who the studio producing it is ludicrous. I mean, that's the only comparisons that we have to go by. So anybody who's crying no fair just doesn't like the fact that they're on the losing team, essentially. You know, and it's not, there's no teams like that, but that's what I feel like is there's become a disconnect between what it means to be a comic book fan and what it means to be a movie fan. And you can be a comic book movie fan who loves Warner Brothers properties and just loves seeing your superheroes on the big screen, and I get that. But it just feels like by saying you cannot compare the Avengers to the Justice League, that you're just putting blinders over your face and covering your ears up and just trying to block out the reality of the situation. And, you touching on the fact that it's better than the other two, it's like we're grading them on a bell curve now. It's like all of a sudden we have to restructure our expectations according to the previous movies from this same studio, when as a viewer you should be able to compare it to everything else you've seen, and I agree with everything you said, and I have to add to it, I don't know if there is a definitive cut of the Justice League at this point. I don't know if there's a version that was filmed that's better, and I don't know that anybody ever will, but did you like
that's true.
Is the extended version of Batman versus Superman that much better?
I'll tell you this, and this is my opinion. What I don't like is when movies present things to us and then they don't make any sense or they don't go anywhere. And I'm saying that as long as that movie there were things in that film that probably could have been cut, and some things that the guy that edited the movie should have put in to make some of these threads make sense.
Sure.
Case in point, we talk about Clark Kent and Superman. Well, Clark Kent is a reporter. Superman's a reporter so he can stay close to what's going on and monitor the world. When he was talking about Batman and what was going on, one of the reasons why he decided to fight Batman and decided to confront him was because he went on an investigative mission to write a story about Batman and what was going on. He went to Gotham City and interviewed people to figure out what was what, okay? And then that helped with the central conflict of the film.
Sure.
One of the main complaints I heard from people coming out of there is, well, I don't understand why they were fighting. I don't understand why they had this conflict. And I'm saying that anything in that movie that could be directly related to the title, BVS, should have been in the film. Now,
absolutely,
is that little bit going to make this thing go from a 6.5 to an 8? No, I'm not going to go that far and say that. I'm just going to say that for that movie, there was a more coherent cut that could have actually gave the plot a little bit more weight and gave a little bit to the fact of, hey, Superman is actually here for the people, and he's actually doing this in a way that we've never really seen him do it before. He went straight to Gotham to talk to folks and figure out what's up with this guy.
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty cool, pretty interesting. And there were some other things, too, with Lois Lane doing some reporting and some other stuff, too. But that's one of the main points that I would say, that they have to really be careful in the editing phase, because we sit here and all we can do is judge what we paid our money to go see. Which it's a Zack Snyder film. It says that in the credits or whatever. So we get to blame the Zack Snyder and people that wrote the script. When in all actuality, you come to find out that, hey, Zack doesn't have final cut on these films. Zack shoots a 3.5-hour movie and he goes home. So I start blaming the studio now.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I put my blame. I'm saying you guys have ample time to get this right, and they don't. And that's why they keep having to release these extended cuts, because if you notice, this is their MO. BVS came out, and then the next day they released the communion scene with Lex Luthor in the Kryptonian ship looking at Steppenwolf. That's on the official Warner Brothers YouTube. That wasn't a leak. So you put that out, letting me know that Steppenwolf could have been in this film or whatever. And it makes more sense when you see that, because at the end of the movie, when he's talking about, oh, you rung the bell and they're coming now. Well, how in the hell would Lex Luthor know anything about that? We didn't see him really do much. Oh, but the next day you put that scene out, and now it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Completely utter crap.
Mm-hmm.
Complete and utter crap. I'm sorry, I went on another rant. I'm sorry. I'm probably going to do it again, but that's fine.
Yeah. You guys heard it here, man. This is the stuff that we really get into, because we don't want these movies to fail. We don't.
No.
We want to see a good Batman movie, okay? That we want to see all these good movies. There was literally a photo of a Batman toy. I shared it with Kevin on Facebook yesterday, where it said even the toy doesn't want to be Batman. And the way that they sculpted Ben Affleck's face, it was just kind of like real sad and downtrodden. You know, so this is what we want. We want good movies.
Fandoms Anonymous.